But first tonight, an exclusive investigation from this show. For 2 years, the alleged threat that Russia poses to our elections has been official Washington's obsession. The usual business of government has come to a halt as Democrats and their allies in the press fret that Russian agents may be interfering with our democracy. The root of these fears, a handful of Russian ads on Facebook that almost nobody saw, and a small number of efforts to hack Democratic Party email accounts. Now, let's assume that all these deeply worried people are sincere, that they really care about the integrity of our democracy. Then why has almost nobody said anything about the tech monopolies that now dominate the exchange of information in this country? If a few dozen Facebook ads are enough to subvert an election, shouldn't we be worried about Facebook itself, which controls literally billions of ads? A couple of times on this show, social scientist Robert Epstein has pointed out that Google alone could determine the outcome of almost any American election just by altering its search suggestions. We'd never know what happened. Oh, say tech defenders, don't worry. These are businesses. They exist to make money, not to push political agendas. Well, it turns out that's not true, and we can prove it. An email obtained exclusively by this show reveals that a senior Google employee deployed the company's resources to increase voter turnout in ways she believed would help the Clinton campaign win in the last election. The email we obtained came from a woman named Eliana Murillo, the former head of Google's multicultural marketing department. She sent the email on November 9th, 2016. That was 1 day after the presidential election. That email was subsequently forwarded by 2 Google vice presidents to more staff members throughout the company. In her email, Murillo touts Google's multifaceted efforts to boost Hispanic turnout in the election. She notes that Latinos voted in record-breaking numbers, especially in states like Florida, Nevada, and Arizona, the last of which she describes as, quote, a key state for us. She brags that the company used its power to ensure that millions of people saw certain hashtags and social media impressions with the goal of influencing their behavior during the election. Elsewhere in the email, Murillo says Google, quote, supported partners like Voto Latino to pay for rides to the polls in key states. She describes this assistance as, quote, a silent donation. Murillo then says that Google helped Voto Latino create ad campaigns to promote those rides. Now, officially, Voto Latino is a nonpartisan entity, but that is a sham. Voto Latino is vocally partisan. Recently, the group declared that Hispanics, all Hispanics, are in President Trump's, quote, crosshairs. They said they plan to respond to this by registering another 1 million additional Hispanic voters in the next presidential cycle. Voto Latino is a group with clear political goals, goals that Google supported in 2016. We asked both Google and Voto Latino for clarification. What exactly did Murillo mean by a silent donation? This is a potentially significant legal question. Neither company responded to us. At the end of her email, Murillo makes it clear that Google was working to get Hillary Clinton elected. This wasn't a get out the vote effort, whatever they say. It was not aimed at all potential voters. It wasn't even aimed at a balanced cross-section of subgroups. Google didn't try to get out the vote among, say, Christian Arabs in Michigan or Persian Jews in Los Angeles. They sometimes vote Republican. It was aimed only at one group, a group that Google cynically assumed would vote exclusively for the Democratic Party. Furthermore, this mobilization effort targeted not the entire country, but swing states vital to the Hillary campaign. This was not an exercise in civics. This was political consulting. It was, in effect, an in-kind contribution to the Hillary Clinton for President campaign. In the end, Google was disappointed. As Murillo herself conceded, quote, ultimately, after all was said and done, the Latino community did come out to vote and completely surprised us. We never anticipated that 29% of Latinos would vote for Trump. No one did. If you see a Latino Googler in the office, please give them a smile. They are probably hurting right now. You can rest assured that the Latinos of these blue states need your thoughts and prayers for them and their families. I had planned a vacation and thought I would be taking the time to celebrate. Now it will be time to reflect on how to continue to support my community through these difficult times, end quote. Nobody at the DNC was more upset by the results than Murillo. Google tried to get Hillary elected. They failed this time. We reached out to Google. The company did not deny that the email was real or that it showed a clear political preference. Their only defense was that the activities it described were either nonpartisan or weren't taken officially by the company. But of course, they were both. Plenty of people in Google knew what was going on, and we've seen no evidence that anyone at Google disapproved of it or tried to rein it in. 2 years later, Google is more powerful than it's ever been, and the left has increasingly become radical in what it is willing to do to regain political power. What could Google be doing this election cycle to support its preferred candidates? What could they do in 2020? It is a question almost nobody in Washington seems interested in even asking. They ought to be interested. Mark Stein is an author and a columnist. He joins us tonight. So, Mark, the outlines of this are really clear. Google is the most powerful company in the history of the world. They have a chokehold on all human information. They could clearly guide the outcome of an election if they chose to do so. They tried to influence the last election. Why shouldn't we be deeply concerned about this?
Well, we should be deeply concerned. As you said, Russia, everyone goes bananas about, because they bought 100 grand's worth of Facebook ads or whatever it was. Google is already more powerful in terms of its control over people's lives than almost every government on the planet. And I would say, arguably, it has more control over American lives than, say, the government of Russia does as a practical matter. And people are very naive about Google searches. They think that it doesn't, whether you're in a hotel in Des Moines or whether you're hanging upside down in your bondage dungeon in Poughkeepsie, when you enter the search results, everything's the same. As this lady, Eliana Murillo, has explained, they're actually capable of now targeting election content specifically to certain voting groups. So this isn't like, you know, rock the vote or public attempts to get out the vote. This is where the world's most powerful company is using data mining to channel partisan election information to key voting demographics. That's very disturbing, because they'd steal the election and you'd never know it.
Well, what's so interesting to me is the left has been very agitated for the past 6 or 7 years about Citizens United and the influence of money on politics. I don't think all of their concerns are stupid, by the way. But this is the example. This is the most powerful influencer of elections, potentially, the world has ever known. And I don't think I've ever heard a single liberal say anything about Google's effect on elections, subverting our democracy. Why is that?
Well, because I think for the obvious reason that they're doing it for, as Eliana Murillo would say, for our side, for our team, for the left's team, for liberalism's team. And that's very different. In a sense, there's something quaintly old-fashioned about the citizens. You know, Jeb Bush blew $100 million to get to 2.4% in Iowa, the old-fashioned way, by sticking up billboards and making robocalls and all the rest of it. What if you had a monopoly on people's access to information, and without them even knowing about it, just when they happen to open up their phone or their laptop in the morning, you were able to direct them to your candidate without anybody knowing it? That's far more important. That's far more scary. The implications are absolutely terrible. And this memo is absolutely terrible in what it reveals about Google. You know, the silent donation bit is very interesting because, as you said, it has legal implications. Whatever legal implications they are, they're a lot more solid than whether some guy's paid off some porn star, just to take a random example.
I hope our elected officials pay attention to this. Mark, we'll see you later in the show. Thank you very much.
You know what? You mentioned the technology area and social media, and I want to just bring to everybody's attention this tweet that Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy put out yesterday. Let me read it to you. It says, Google claims to be fair but gave a silent donation to left-wing group to stop Trump. Google works with China and Russia to censor the internet but cancels a contract with the Pentagon. Ignores Senate hearing. It's time for Google to answer some questions. An invitation will be on its way shortly. Now, I thought that was pretty aggressive. And, you know, I'm wondering if technology has taken a different stance in terms of how you invest here, given this new spotlight on potentially more regulation.
something's going to have to happen. I view right now as Google maybe one of the most dangerous companies on the planet. Right now, this company, think of everything that we use. You go on Google Mail. You don't even write the email, right? You don't even send it. It goes to them. They're listening in our homes. All of these companies, at some point, what are we going to do about regulation? It's a real challenge for us, because the antitrust laws that were written for Standard Oil in 1911.
But has that changed your stance toward investing in these stocks? Yes. Because this is where a lot of the growth is, right?
I don't own Google right now, but I certainly am full boat tech right now. That's where the growth is, and that's where I have to put my money.
And do you see a long runway as a result of perhaps more tax cuts? Because House Republicans are looking to make the individual cuts permanent in Tax Reform 2.0. What kind of effect might that have on the economy? Is that another reason to get invested?
I hope that happens. I don't know if it's going to happen this time around. It's going to be an interesting political dynamic, because it's going to force Democrats to vote against a tax cut again. In this
but we're headed
election.
towards $1 trillion deficit as well, so.
Well, you got 4,000 agencies out there, all with a budget. Let's address the spending side of it. And every one of these agencies wants a budget that's higher next year. That's the problem.
Yeah, but bottom line, you're still invested, and you think this market.
I am fully invested right now here in the United States.
David, it's good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. David Nelson joining us there at Bell Point.